Quiet on set. Picture is up. All right, roll sound.
Rolling.
Roll cameras.
Cams rolling.
And 3, 2.
Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome to Hank's Think Tank. We're back in the tank again. I've got a great show for you here today. I've got Ernest Bailes. He's our Texas State Representative of District 18, and he just finished the 88th legislative session in Austin. So he's decided to come on the show and tell us about what happened and what these guys are doing. But the focus of this discussion, hopefully, will be a little bit about property taxes. This is something I've been wanting to talk about for a while because it kind of gets everybody, a little excited. And I've got my own views on property taxes and what we could possibly do to alleviate the pressure somewhat. But we also need to keep in mind that this is one of the largest avenues of funding for the state of Texas. So property taxes is a complicated matter. It's not something that can be solved with just a stroke of a pen. But these types of discussions, I think, will help to get people to understand what's going on and help us all to maybe come up with a better plan and move forward in the future. Representative Bailes, great to have you, man. How are you?
No, Hank, glad to be here. I'll tell you first and foremost, the studio looks awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah,
You've got a lot to be proud of here.
Long way going. I'm glad to have it.
I think last time I was on the show, you guys, it was just a 2D rendering on paper, and now it is a fully completed and quite nice looking studio. So congrats.
Thanks. Yeah, we're fully equipped, so we can pretty much do anything now.
Awesome.
So let's talk about the 88th. So that must have been a fun time. There was a lot going on. A lot came out in mainstream media about what was happening. So tell us about property taxes and what you guys tried to do and where we're at with it.
There's no great starting point for the fact of the 88th. So we finished up, we were in session 140 days. Texas legislature is in session 140 days every other spring.
Okay.
When we finish, it is Memorial Day, sine die, we gavel out, we're done with business. We gaveled out at 6 p.m. on Memorial Day. We worked Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Mm-hmm. There were deals on the tables trying to be negotiated predominantly on property taxes.
Okay.
There was no meat in the middle. So we gaveled out, sine die at 6 o'clock, and the governor called us back by declaration 9 p.m. that same night.
Wow.
He handled it very different than how the governor would typically handle a special session.
Uh-huh.
So statutorily, we're required 140 days every other spring. It's a job. It's a very different system here in Texas than it is a lot of other states. Essentially, $600 a month. You serve that, but
it's a high-paying job.
It's a high-paying job. Let me tell you, it's it makes the real job that much more important with a whole lot less time. So
sure.
It makes it interesting. So with that being said, the governor was pretty concise how he handled the call, a special session. Mm-hmm. Now, what the call is, the governor puts on his call exactly what we can address, rather than saying border security and reduction in property taxes. He was very specific with that call, and he specified that would to be accomplished through compression.
Okay.
We had plans in the House, we had plans in the Senate, and we're still at a deadlock because of that. But I'm going to tell you how we started off and how we got there. I know it's we're still in special session right now.
Okay.
We were called back. We were in there the next morning. We stayed through that night. We addressed both bills per the governor's call. So legally, that's all we can do. We can only address the topics which are on the governor's call.
Okay. And both bills would be the Senate bill and the House bill, right?
No, it's the border security bill.
Okay, border security.
And the property tax bill.
Okay.
So we addressed both of those, and we gavel out sine die.
Okay.
The Senate chose to take a very different approach on how they handle the bills, and they were quite upset that we gaveled out sine die and said that we didn't do enough. But legally, we could only do what was in the governor's call.
Mm-hmm.
So we addressed those, and then there's been a texting chain back and forth. I'm sure all of your listeners have had multiple texts if they've ever voted, and said one is the House version, one's the Senate version,
right,
and then from the governor. So there's a whole lot of personalities at play. And with that being said, the governor supports the House on the compression side.
Right.
We wanted to do an appraisal cap. I'd actually filed bills which was a 2.5% growth on your homestead. On residential properties, they could
Okay.
only increase by 2.5%, and businesses 3.5%. We do a really good job of trying to take care of our homeowners, or attempting to. I'm not saying it always comes to fruition like it needs to, but
Right.
we put a lot of effort into trying to take care of our
And that's a
homeowners
statewide cap, right?
statewide. But we do
Okay.
very little to actually protect our businesses.
Right.
And when you go to we just got finished with Little League All Stars, and you look on the fence lines and on the jerseys, those are all of our businesses.
Yeah.
They are who support small
Absolutely.
town Texas, small town America, and we've got to never lose sight of that. There's also a lot of groups that don't like your caps. As far as your realtors and a lot of your other business and stuff, they said it's a rate issue, it's not a valuation issue. But when someone sees your valuation go through the roof,
I know, but that's 6 1/2 dozen of the other.
It-
Here's the bottom line. If I write a bigger check, my taxes went up.
100%.
I don't care if it's the rate or if it's the valuation.
And the only way to address that is with compression. And the governor wanted, I think it's 16.2 cent compression, which would be the largest single reduction in property taxes paid ever in the state of Texas.
Okay.
Now that affects every homeowner, every landowner, every business owner. If you own any tract and you receive any statement from the county appraisal district, it would compress how much you would actually pay on your taxes.
Okay.
It is the only solid movement to get away from property taxes as a whole. That will be a difficult thing to ever accomplish, but this is the
I
only
think it would.
this is the only sure direction to move us closer to that direction.
Okay.
So with that, our biggest issue is how we fund public schools. That's what a lot of people miss. So with that being
Yeah, the
said,
largest portion of property taxes, at least here,
So,
is
I mean,
public schools.
essentially you're looking at half of your taxes go to fund
Oh, yeah.
public schools.
Yeah, if not more.
It was not designed that way. The state obligation per the Constitution is that we fully fund public education. And as the local taxpayers have paid more, the percentage that they pay has actually increased while the state's contribution has went down. So by compressing that, we're actually increasing the state contribution back to our public school funding and decreasing the burden on our taxpayers.
Okay.
The lieutenant governor wanted to take a very different approach, and he wants to hold a hard line of a $100,000 homestead exemption for every homeowner.
Okay.
That helps our homeowners. And you read the text, and it's going to help over $1,000, where the House's plan would only help about $600 to $700.
Right, and that homestead exemption's at $40,000 now, correct? Isn't it?
I'm pretty certain.
Okay.
I'm pretty certain
Yeah.
that would increase that up to $100,000.
That's a lot.
And it
It's
would
a big increase.
It would help every homeowner, to the negative detriment of any other property owner, be it residential, landowner, or a business,
How would that be a negative detriment to them?
because that's where the balance would be made up from.
Oh.
So with the House's standpoint and the governor's standpoint, to
So
actually,
they're getting it one way or another.
they are.
Yeah.
The only way we can fix that is by compressing the rate, increasing the state's contribution. Because the Senate's plan to actually increase the homestead exemption up to $100,000, it helps the homeowners, but to the negative detriment, puts no additional monies from the state.
Okay. Wow.
So with that,
So the
they actually
businesses
wanted to
end
go
up
to
paying that.
10%. So
Okay.
it was really hard on the 100,000. Then I think now where they had talked, and it was getting to a $100,000 homestead exemption and a 10-cent compression, rather than the House and the governor's plans of 16.2.
Wow.
So pretty significant there. And the deal is, it's we are elected to represent the people and do the business of the state of Texas. And when we want to act like young kids and not come to the room and have a valid conversation, it's tough to conduct business. And that's the situation we're in now, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. And I'm not really sure how we get back from being here with that, because it seems to run amok with almost every topic. Doesn't matter what the topic is. It seems to happen across the board. And unless we get a handle on that, I just kind of see our republic or our democracy continuing to deteriorate to the point to where we're so stuck in deadlock that nothing happens.
Fortunately, at the state level, we can respectfully agree to disagree within the body of the House, and that's a good thing. We've
Yeah,
got
that is
150
good.
members. We represent every region of the state. So my district now, when I first came on the show, it was
It was right after.
It was right after
Yeah,
redistricting.
Yeah.
So it's so I represent essentially 195,000 people.
Okay.
All of San Jacinto County, all of Liberty County, all of Hardin County. I go all the way to the Beaumont city limits, and then 8% of Montgomery County, typically considered East Montgomery County. So I have all the Splendora School District and a lot of the top part of New Caney.
So is that 195? Is that based on census or is that based on voters?
It's based on the census. They'll
Okay.
actually take the total census of the state of Texas and divide that by 150.
Okay.
And that's how we got up to that 195,000.
I wonder how many registered voters we have out of that.
I could get that, but I honestly don't know that offhand.
I'm
I know
curious.
they're far more registered than what actually take the time or care enough
There's a
to go
bunch.
vote.
There's a bunch. No?
That's the problem. It's hard to come to the table with a valid argument and expect to be heard if you didn't care enough to even go vote.
I know we're approaching 1 million registered voters in all of Montgomery County, so we're real close. I
So-
don't know what the exact number is, but we're real close.
So Montgomery County has 3 full representatives, so 3 times 195 plus the 8% that I have,
Wow.
which is about 18,000 people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's you know what, it's been a blessing. I've really enjoyed getting to represent East Montgomery County. You guys are going
needed
through.
you.
You're going through a lot of growth and a lot
Oh, yeah.
of infrastructure challenges that certain parts of Montgomery County have already far surpassed that issue, and that was years ago. So you guys are just now kind of coming to that, and we're reaching the same thing over in Liberty County and in San Jacinto County
thing
and
about
Hardin
us-
County.
Wonderful thing about us is we got some smart minds out there working on infrastructure.
You do.
So yeah, we've got our new commissioner, Matt Gray, and that guy got elected. He had a 9-month span between the time he was elected and the time he took office, and he worked every day during that 9 months. And he became the quickest study I've ever seen on just everything from drainage all the way down to groundwater. You know, so he's a smart guy, and he's going to help us out.
I have a lot of respect. I have a lot of respect for Matt, consider him a good friend. I have been in conversation with him quite a bit.
Yeah.
I've saw him twice over the last week and a half, and anytime I've told Matt, I said anything I can ever do to help, you let me know, and I'm glad to do so because that's he's here for the right reasons and wants to see good and do good, and I want to help him any way that I can.
And I think we've got a lot of people in the county like that now. We just need to somehow harness that energy and direct it correctly. Because I think our biggest problem really is that we suffer from population growth, but we're not keeping up with it infrastructurally.
Or tax base.
So, yeah. So it's, and all these questions there's a million different answers out there, and no one's really providing an avenue by which to get where we need to go. And it concerns me because as things continue to grow and as we experience more population, are we going to catch up to it with infrastructure, or are we just going to fall behind and just start to have problems? You know,
It's
and historically, when you look at other places like, Houston went through the same thing, and different parts went through this, and they all kind of had their growing pains, but then came out of adolescence, so to speak, and became mature communities. I'm hoping the same thing will happen here, but
we know
it
the
kinda
growth.
makes you concerned.
We know the growth is coming.
Oh yeah, you
And,
can't stop.
and the deal is you can turn a blind eye or you can try to be an active part of making that positive. And I think there's a lot of people who were wholeheartedly get to work a lot with EMC Chamber of Commerce. It's kind of interesting to be there and to meet a lot of the people. We've got a lot of good guys that are here, even from surrounding areas that see the potential that East Montgomery County has.
Right.
Little old Splendora, Texas is
I know.
when you go to the school, you go right across, you look at the growth, and then also I've looked at some of the projections and some of the new projects that are coming down.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fine line. We have to make sure that the new growth, especially where we start off with a clean slate, that we manage that in a responsible way to mitigate the negative consequence of that growth, especially happening as fast as it is.
Mm-hmm.
We're also not losing sight of your older neighborhoods that are more established that
Exactly.
that still need that need more love than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to go back when you have established property lines and you have fences and you have structures and everything there. It's It's a lot harder than it is
Yeah,
to
it's
go
tough.
through and set new storm drains and make sure we have the grade and the elevation set properly.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree.
So with
So
session,
let me ask you this about property taxes. Going back to property taxes. So being that the school taxes are a large component of that, I remember years ago, I'm going to show my age, when the Texas State Lottery was first put in place, they said that money was exclusively going to go to fund our school systems. What happened? It ended up in the general fund, and it didn't actually go to our schools. I mean, it seems like the pressure has never been taken off the homeowner like it should have been with things that happened in the past.
so
And my second part of this is, do you think we'll ever be able to move away from property taxes and go with maybe a consumption tax or something else that may seem legitimate and may carry the answers that we need? Or would a consumption tax hurt us even more because it would be an all-year tax instead of a once-a-year tax, if you know what I mean?
here's the conflicts on all of those.
Okay.
So with the lottery, just like yourself, I naively thought that that's where the money was going because that's what we were told.
Right.
And just like in Texas on the budget, we file a bill, and then it changes before it comes out of committee, then it changes on the floor, then it goes to Senate. The bill that we get back is very different, and then the governor can actually line item veto portions of, just like he has done on several of the bills.
Okay.
So the final bill that passes is very different than what started. So I actually set up a meeting with the Texas Lottery Commission. I said, hey, help me understand this because this money's supposed to go here. They said, well, it initially was when it was written, but that's not how it passed.
Ah, okay.
So it was sold as, it was written as. Once it went through the meat grinder, it came out different.
Wow.
And I think at that point, no one wanted to do a good job of telling you what happened because they weren't proud of.
Yeah, we don't get that kind of
They
news.
weren't proud of what happened to it. So
Right.
with that being said, pub ed funding. I'm going to get back to pub ed funding in just a second because that's a really big part of the equation. Also a big topic of something called vouchers and ESAs that you've heard a lot about.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get back to that, but then I want to go to, before I do, I want to hit the consumption tax.
Okay.
When they put a pipeline, I've said this many times, they put pipelines right there across the road in front of my house in between Shepherd and Cold Spring, Texas, and little old San Jacinto County.
Okay.
Not a single joint of that pipe, not a single gallon of that off-road diesel, and not a single piece of Caterpillar equipment was purchased in that taxing school district,
Okay.
nor in the whole county. So any dollars that were collected as part of that purchase and that consumption did not go to help us there locally.
Okay.
If my wife goes to Walmart, H-E-B, and buys groceries for our household, we don't have a single Walmart or H-E-B in the whole county. She would actually be taking money from the education of our two kids to go make those purchases
And
with a consumption
somewhere
tax
else.
and put it
Okay.
somewhere else. So with that being said, Montgomery County is in a lot better shape because of the growth.
Mm-hmm.
Splendora ISD is going to be a lot different because we don't have the industry that Conroe proper, a lot of the other parts of
Right.
Montgomery County has.
Porter, New Canaan.
But then you go down to San Jacinto County. So I represent 17 school districts.
Mm-hmm.
Houston ISD has right at 15 representatives. My districts get 1/17 of a vote. HISD gets 15 votes. So if we have to go to a statewide collection as far as consumption tax,
Mm-hmm.
we start a new state bureaucratic system of collecting and disseminating those funds. Who has the loudest voice to get the majority of those funds?
Right, but would it come down to lobbyists, basically? I mean, would it?
Not lobbyists as much
or is
of
there
the
a
votes.
mathematical formula that could be played out that would be fair across the board? Yeah, and it seems like
Fair sounds good as a word. Let's talk about
yeah.
pub ed funding.
Okay.
And you and I can agree that no child in the state of Texas is worth more than another as far as their
Absolutely,
education.
I agree. Yeah.
So with that being said, let's do the bell curve.
Okay.
And let's try to equalize the number of dollars that a school district receives for every student. Across
Okay.
the state, across the board, that's fair and equitable way to get things done.
Okay.
Those right in the middle will agree with you. Those on the downside of that bell curve and the negative, they would say that's great because they're going to receive more money.
Mm-hmm.
What about the positive side of that bell curve? Every one of those would actually see a reduction in funding. It sounds good until you truly look at the numbers, and you have to tell half of the schools in the state of Texas that you will receive more money, but it's the best way to give you more money.
So is there another way besides consumption tax? Or do you think we'll just always be locked with property taxes? And my only problem that I have, I don't mind paying my taxes. I really don't. We don't even contest it, to be honest with you, because I think the county needs it. And I know that sounds stupid, but that's just the way I see it. We're growing. We've got to do stuff. I've got to play my part. If I have to pay a little extra, it's the way it is, you know. But my problem with property taxes is that I feel like I'll never completely own my property. You know,
wholly agree with you.
It's always subject to being taxed.
And I actually look, where did property taxes come from? And then you hear a lot of people like, well, our founding fathers would have never stood for this.
Maybe not. You know,
they're the ones that instigated property taxes.
Did they?
They did. They came. They came after. Yeah, they came after the Battle of San Jacinto, Battle of the Alamo. We were a new state. That was their way to produce revenue, to pay their debt service, and so that we could generate funds to be a new state.
Okay.
That's where they came from. I mean, they go back. To the beginning of the state of Texas.
Wow.
So there was even talk 2 sessions ago of a reduction in property taxes, increase in sales tax as a hybrid approach. Mm-hmm. You kind of couple that with a no new revenue tax base. What that is would decrease the burden from how much property taxes that we collect. Mm-hmm. We increase the amount that we actually collect in a consumption tax, but we didn't have the 2/3 vote to make that constitutional.
Okay.
So therefore, we would implement a sales tax, and we would lower the property tax. If we do that, we have to lock that so that we can't go back retroactively when we need a little more money or where there's a change in political parties or the whims of politics.
Right.
And so, you know what? Nobody's complaining much about the sales tax, but let's put our property taxes back up where they were. Mm-hmm. That would be a very bad thing.
Yeah, it would, because now you're getting double tax.
Yeah, so now you're getting double tax. And when the no new revenue tax rate, how that works, if you collected, just rounded numbers, if you collected $10 million last year, you take all your valuations, regardless how much they go up, and you assess the rate to receive the same collections of that $10 million.
Okay.
And then you also add to the tax rolls all new properties. So those come in at whatever their valuations are. And then if you need additional monies in excess of that, you come in an open public forum that the public can be part of and say, you know what, to cover the needed infrastructure growth, sidewalks, this, that, and the other, in addition to this $10 million plus this other we're going to collect, we're going to need another $250,000 or another $1 million. In order to get to that $1 million, we need to increase the rate on these valuations this much.
Okay. That's
probably the fairest, most equitable system to get it done.
Right. Because right now there's not really a hold on appraisals, is there? I mean, they can appraise whatever they want, at least in Montgomery County, from what I've been told. Appraisals can run amok all day long.
We have protections on the home side, but not on the commercial side. Yeah. And the commercial side is what, like, truly,
commercial side's just as important as the home side,
without a doubt,
not more.
And it brings up a lot. I mean, just like you said, you do your part. So I'm no fan of property taxes whatsoever. I pay every tax that any other person pays, and a healthy chunk of that.
Yeah, I can see it becoming unsustainable for a lot of people, and that concerns me a lot. So
with that being said, you have somebody that, you know what, as I build my business and I make it more successful, I don't mind paying more in taxes. Mm-hmm. If I have a really good year, I don't mind paying a little bit more in taxes. If I have a bad year, I don't have to pay as much in taxes. And when I quit working, I want to be able to quit paying taxes.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds like a great plan.
You know what that is?
What?
That's tied to your income.
Right.
The state of Texas overwhelmingly passed the constitutional referendum that we will not have an income tax in the state of Texas. And I'm not saying that advocating on behalf of one. However, that is what people say when they come and talk to me all the time. To have a good year, I'll pay more. If I'm not having a good year, I don't want to pay as much. When I quit, by golly, I want to quit paying taxes.
It does point at an income tax.
That is a tax which is associated with your income. So we've taken that off the table. So now that that's off the table, you look
But
at.
wait a minute. Now that you brought that up, I'd like to kick it around for a minute because I've never really considered a state income tax. Mentally, I haven't gone through it and drawn it out. So do you think, in your best wild guess, that if we did implement a state income tax, that it would turn out to be less than you would pay in property taxes?
I truly don't know. I mean, that's completely out of my
I wonder what
wheelhouse.
that number would be in order to maintain the same level of funding. And then, of course, you'd have to also fund the infrastructure to support it because it's going to take quite a crew and a lot of infrastructure to support a state income tax, I would think. And I don't know if that infrastructure is already there or not.
We have a healthy, growing economy in the state of Texas because we do not have a state income tax.
Yeah.
So you also have to look at it from the economic standpoint of how will that hinder our future growth?
Yeah.
And the kicker is you have your home here. You have no intention of selling your home. Your neighbor sells their home. They sell it to someone who is used to paying taxes in California or somewhere outside of the state.
Yeah, a lot of Californians.
So they pay way more than what the typical perceived value would be. And you're negatively impacted because they raised the rate of your house because your neighbor sold. That's a problem. And I've even looked at how you address that. And they said, well, so we're non-disclosure states. We don't actually disclose how much money is part of the transaction when real estate changes hands. California, I'm not as familiar with how their process works. However, I do know as they've capped a lot of their stuff based on what that actual price was changing hands and the tax associated with that, they make entry into the market as a first-time home buyer practically impossible. And a lot of homes are actually going into co-ops and such like that and going into trust. So there are people way smarter than I am. So I'm not the best to give tax advice or even explain how the system works. I can more so tell you why certain things are not working that we're trying. And like even on a home, on a consumption tax. So it's a deal that, you know what, if I can pay for the tax associated with that home when I build it, does that going to put barriers on those who can build? It will. But then again, is there going to be value associated with knowing that once I build that home and I pay for that, I paid the taxes and now own the home? I don't think anyone could argue that that's a positive.
Right.
Getting that done is far more complicated than the answer that I have for you. But I mean, that's ultimately, I mean, people say, hey, we want to get rid of our property taxes. I say, hey, I'm in the same boat. I would love to get rid of our property taxes. Let's do a consumption tax so that if I want to do something, I want to build a project, I have to make sure I can afford that, and I do that. And once I know I paid the taxes, then I own that. Yes, that sounds great. And I'm all for that if we can figure out how to make that work.
Yeah.
And I think the compression is the surest step to get toward that.
Okay.
And then again, so pub ed funding.
Yeah.
Big topic that we discussed a lot during this legislative session, the vouchers.
Okay.
We've got our governor is all in on the vouchers. Lieutenant governor's all in the vouchers. The House is a lot more divided on that. I was elected to do one job, and that's represent the people of this district first, and second, represent the greater good of the state of Texas.
Okay.
My allegiance is to no one other than what is best for this district and taking care of the kids that are right here. And with that being said, it gets brought up a lot. I mean, people say, well, you know what? It's my tax dollars. I should be able to take my tax dollars wherever I want to educate my kids. That sounds very good, and I have a hard time arguing with that until we do the numbers. With that being said, so it's been proposed a voucher of $8,000.
Okay.
So if you have 3 kids, $8, $16, $24,000. If we're going to roughly figure that 50% of your tax statement actually goes to fund that portion of your tax bill.
Mm-hmm.
So 8, 16, 24, I need to know that you're paying at least $48,000 in taxes to know that those are your tax dollars to come back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of folks are paying $48,000 in taxes.
Right. That's
And
for
then
sure.
again, what about the individuals that chose not to have kids?
Mm-hmm.
They said, well, I should be able to get that back. Or retirees that don't have kids in the system anymore. They said, well, I should be able to get that back because I'm paying for a nice house on the lake and I don't even have kids. So
Right.
once you open that Pandora's box, there's no way to shut that.
Yeah, that's for sure. You're not getting that cat back in the bag.
And it's a tough deal. You look at what the obligation for the state is and how the state works. If you've got a city park or a city pool, everyone has access to that city park or city pool. And we do our absolute best to make sure that's nice, functional,
Mm-hmm.
and does the best job to provide the service. If you don't want your kids to swim with the likes of kids that play in the city park or the city pool and you'd rather than be at the country club,
Mm-hmm.
you have every right to do so. But to ask the state to pay for that,
Yeah, it's wrong. I agree.
So with that, I mean, and the deal is, it's in all the testimony on education, charter schools or private schools, they say we can do such a better job because we don't have the restriction of A, B, or C.
Mm-hmm.
In my simple mind, how about let's take off restriction A, B, or C to the public schools
Mm-hmm.
and let every kid have access to the best education that we can give that we can afford that kid.
I agree.
So I'm kind of confused why that's the direction and the hill to die on that a lot of our leadership has chose. They've done tours, actually go into the private schools, tout your tax dollars. You know best for your kids.
Mm-hmm.
My wife's a teacher. My family's in education, and I'm not worried about my kids, or I'm not worried about your kids. But we have a lot of parents that are always going to have their kids' best interests at heart.
Sure.
And then again, when you see a way to make money on your kids,
Yeah, it's wrong.
that's not what's best to get the kids out of that cycle.
Right.
So I think our public education is where we need to focus to make sure we do as good a possible job being a fiduciary for the funds on behalf of the state of Texas to fund our public schools and do a good job, support our teachers, and let them teach our kids. Because that's the lifeblood of what the state of Texas is our next
Absolutely.
generation.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so when will this session end? Do you know?
We have no clue. So the governor can call as many special sessions as he would like.
Mm-hmm.
0 minimum, 30 days maximum.
Okay.
So we could be called back for a special session and be there for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
We could be there 30 days and the governor finally call it at 30 days and call us right back the next hour.
Wow.
We were told, I was told to make no plans for the summer that I can't get out of and to
Okay.
plan on coming back multiple times.
So how close do you think we are to getting a deal on property taxes?
I don't know. It's been a really tough situation where
Yeah, I saw the differences between the House bill and the Senate bill, and they're quite different. And
I've
I'm wondering where compromise will be found, and I don't even know where the governor is on any of this.
supported every measure to reduce property taxes that has came before the House and will continue to do so.
Sure. Yeah.
There's some that are better that give more of a tax break, but any bit of relief that we can give to the people of Montgomery County or the rest of House District 18 is going to be a plus. So I have supported appraisal caps. I've told you the negative side with that. There's a lot that would rather not see appraisal caps. And just any mechanism that we can go forward with, we have got to give relief to our taxpayers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Because-
so where we're going with that now is Lieutenant Governor says absolutely no compromise.
Really?
The governor says absolutely no compromise, and he is not on the same page with Lieutenant Governor. We in the House passed in short order the 16.2% compression that was in the call by the governor.
Okay.
We wasted no time getting that done because we know the taxpayers deserve that, need that. Let's
Sure.
get this into effect. So we're in a tough stalemate right now, and it has nothing to do with the house. The house is ready to go, but the governor has plainly said that he demands property tax reduction to all landowners. That's going to come through suppression or compression. Sorry about that. That's going to come through compression, and Lieutenant Governor has plainly said he will not do anything unless it includes his $100,000 homestead exemption, and he will look and a smaller bit of compression.
Wow. Yeah.
And in the House, we are locked to statutorily what is on that call. If the governor calls us back and has a different call, we can take a different approach. But I think compression is going to be the keystone of any program that goes forward.
Yeah. So a lot of work yet still to be done.
Yes and no. The work's done. It's you have to get the players in the room and be able to.
That's where the real work is.
That's where the real work is. Now in the House, Speaker Phelan actually went forward and just appointed yesterday. I was trying to think it was the 20th, but it was yesterday. So Speaker Phelan actually appointed a 16-member special committee to address property taxes and also address the feasibility of completely abolishing property taxes. That's 13 members, predominantly made up of members on the Ways and Means Committee, and then some from Appropriations, and then 3 members at large from the state.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the commitment's there. We're ready to go. I mean, the problem is I am not on that committee. I have one vote of 150, and my vote has been absolutely every time we need a reduction in property taxes. We have got to take care of the people whose this burden is placed upon, and so.
Yeah. So, do you think the abolishment of property taxes is just a BS deal? Just because it's a great thing to please the voters. You know, the voters want to hear it. I mean, I want to hear it.
I don't think you can 100% ever get there.
Yeah.
I mean, and I get beat up. It said, well, then he's not actively trying to get rid of it. I was like, I'm just being a realist.
Right.
I mean, I'm a business person and a realist.
There's a lot of employment that supports it. There's a lot of agency that supports it. There's a lot of government that supports it.
And then you also look
what would you do with all that?
Well, and you look at if we're a straight consumption tax and look at the retiree on a fixed income.
Yeah, that would. Yeah, I had that conversation last night. So yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, there's no easy way to get it done. I mean, it's a deal that I think we need to be responsible with any spending that we do, and know that we are being as frugal as we can be with the money of the state, which came from the taxpayers.
I agree with that, and I think that frugality would help us out a lot because it would give the ability to relieve some pressure off the homeowners.
Yes, sir.
You know, but that again is such a complicated matter, and it's so multifaceted. It's almost, at what angle do you approach that from?
Yeah,
where do you begin?
It is a giant spider web, and there's no point on that web that you can pull without having impacts on all other parts of the web, some far more substantial than others.
Yeah, I agree. So is there anything else in the 88th that you'd like to cover besides property taxes? Anything that happened that's good or that maybe wasn't so highly publicized?
We put a lot of work into a whole lot of things, and I'll tell you, unfortunately, it was a massacre at the end of the veto period. I honestly don't even know what bills that we fully passed.
Right.
Because there were a ton that were vetoed
yeah, I don't
by
remember
the
what
governor.
That last number was, but it was 100 and something. So, I mean, wow.
And a lot of those were simply to try to force people back to the table, and I don't know if that's the best way to accomplish that. So, I mean, every leader has his own method, and so I have to hope that it was well advised and it will be productive, and I'll kind of have to leave it at that. I mean, it was a deal that I try to not reinvent the wheel, try to be as effective as I can. I mean, when I'm up there, we put everything into it to make sure that we do what is best for this area. I spend more time killing legislation than I do passing it because the negative unintended consequence of our more rural areas, and it's still kind of hard to assume that Splendora right here is a rural area, but it's still a pretty rural area in comparison to our neighbors just south.
We've moved away from it a little bit, but Yeah, I can
We
see
we
maybe
have we have the rule.
10 years, it's going to be a different story out here.
I concur with that.
Yeah.
So with that, I mean, I have to spend more time to address current piece of legislation with amendments, getting certain things struck from that, or actually killing a piece of legislation because of the negative unintended consequence.
Oh, that makes sense.
So I took a stand for public education this session, which I always have. I mean, it's a deal that our kids are everything. It's a deal that
absolutely.
Why do you do this job? It's to bring about positive change, and the first thing we have to take care of our kids. Mm-hmm. Take care of our kids, and then take care of our taxpayers.
That's it.
And with that being said, so I got up and I made a pretty solid statements about the way that we were handling some of our business in the state of Texas, predominantly an 80-page committee substitute that had not been vetted and that we tried to pass in the wee hours of the night without public comment or without the members being aware. We passed a lot of bills, and it would seem somewhat asinine for the outside looking in to say you passed a bill, but you hadn't even read it.
Wow.
That's what this bill was. This bill is new language. Certain parts were new language that had never been heard in committee whatsoever. Others were of the 80-page bills. The last 30 pages were about ESAs, education savings accounts, and vouchers. With that being said, that committee had heard 5 bills that addressed ESAs, and they chose not to vote out a single bill.
Wow.
But this was 30 pages of the high points of those bills plus some new stuff. So when I got up and I did a procedural move that hadn't been done in 32 years in the state of Texas and actually struck the chairman's ability to suspend the rules and bring that up, retribution was pretty swift.
Great.
So I had a lot of my bills, retribution to me by the opposing chamber.
Oh, okay.
So I had that killed most of my bills.
Did it?
It did.
Wow.
Would I do it again? Absolutely. Was it the right thing to do? It was, and I will do it. And it's that brings about a greater positive change for the state of Texas by making sure that we do things the right way.
Sure.
Than simply.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't understand how complicated these matters can get. You know.
I mean, I had 2 bills, 2 really good bills. One was a CPS permanency and care bill. So right now, if a kid's in CPS, and a kid, they would lose benefits the last day of the month when that child turns 18 and enroll in school. If they're in CPS system, pretty high likelihood they didn't have. There were some bumps in their upbringing.
Absolutely.
That's just something led to them being placed in the CPS system.
Right.
Those are the kids that need our love more than anything. We've got to help those kids so that they can have a fighting chance to be able to help themselves.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who grow out of the program, and where do they end up?
So with this bill simply stated that they could receive benefits through the last day of the school year at the age of 19 as long as they are currently and in good standing enrolled in a public school system.
Okay.
Passed unanimous, went all the way through. That bill was not even referred in the Senate after I made my stand on public education.
That's too bad.
We had another bill, PTSD, and went unanimously. It was a pretty awesome program. It actually took a blood draw and biomarkers and completely changed how we treat PTSD. Had a super successful initial trials, and this was to be able to go forward and do a larger statewide trial.
Okay. Is that for a new drug or?
It's not for a new drug, and that's the thing about it. How the VA treats PTSD, every person goes through the same evaluations. You go before, you'll stand on the ball, you'll draw pictures. What do you see here? There's a whole lot, and they do the same across the board. Okay. And the same prescriptions are always.
And I bet that's based on old technology.
It's all based on old technology. Yeah. And what this does, it actually addresses your biomarkers and more on hormone production. Wow. Okay. And it's able to get that. So the guys that came and testified, they were all retired special forces, the best of the best. They've been in every situation. They have served their country in ways that we will never understand. Right. So with that being said, The individual who's now over the program for the state of Texas, he had permission from his boss to come and testify, and he brought 2 bags of pills. One had a D wrote on the bottom, and the other had an N wrote on the bottom. He took these pills every day, took these pills every night. Went through the system. They were able to address that from a chemical standpoint within the body, and he is not on a single medication now.
Wow, that's pretty
So
good.
they prescribe the medications, and then when it's not effective, they simply increase the dose. And then they have to prescribe additional medications to counteract the negative impact of the current medications.
Right.
So those were 2 of the main bills that hit the hardest. Because I
that's tough.
stood up for what was right, those bills were never even picked up or given a chance. And unfortunately, that's how politics works. But
Shouldn't.
it shouldn't. And
But
that's
it
the deal.
is. Yeah.
But
you could always reintroduce those.
I will.
later
I mean,
date.
we can and we will do that. We're not going to quit on this. It's the right
Okay.
thing for the right reasons, and that's why I'm there. And I'll take the hits because kids and our veterans
happen,
and everybody's
yeah.
worth it.
Okay, sounds good. Anything else going on that we need to know about?
You know what? I mean, just really anxious to hear from the governor what the plan is so we can get this addressed.
Good luck.
We owe it to. So also, unfortunately, the Senate has stated plainly, and the governor has stated not so plainly, that we have the largest budget surplus we've ever had in the state of Texas.
Okay.
Teacher pay raises. This came up.
Mm-hmm.
And we have refused to pass any teacher pay raise without the passage of a school voucher program.
Those two have absolutely nothing to do with each other.
Correct. But that is a play on politics, and it's
Yeah.
shameful. And
It
that's,
is, yeah.
I'm hoping that cooler heads will prevail, and we can do what we need to. I mean, we have to take care of our teachers, take care of our kids, and we've got to take care of our taxpayers.
Yeah.
We have the
agree.
means to do those all right now. We need to put politics aside and take care of our business, and then we need to get out of Austin. We mess up more in 140 days than you can fix in the next year and a half.
Yeah.
And we pass bills that are so convoluted. Sometimes it takes that year and a half to fully understand the impact of. And I'd like to minimize that as much as we can.
Yeah. It's the best thing we can do. Well, I appreciate you coming out and visiting with me today.
No,
And,
glad
I
to.
think we
Always
had a good
enjoy it.
conversation. I learned a lot about property taxes that I didn't know. So, and I was always of the opinion that a consumption tax could fix property taxes, provided it would provide enough revenue. And I don't know what that percentage would be, but you made a great point about how it would adversely affect those in rural areas and other areas, and I hadn't thought about that. So, wow, it's going to be interesting to see which way it goes.
It is. I mean, I'm committed. I mean, we've got some really smart guys up there. It's I do not claim to be a tax professional.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I know, and I know what I don't know, and that is one that I have to seek a lot of guidance from those who are far more intelligent than I am, and I am sharp enough to understand that I need some good guidance, and we've been working on that. It's a deal that we've got guys that are working really hard on that, and I've told them that I will do anything I can to help support the cause, and we're going to keep working on my end.
Well, we appreciate you. And, word around the campfire is you're the guy and you're doing great for us. So I do appreciate that. And if there's anything that we can do for you as a community, you can always reach out. And there's several avenues you can go through and get all the help you need. So
no,
keep
I appreciate
working
it.
on
And
Let's make it
I'd
happen.
like to do, now that we're back some, I'd really like to kind of keep this thing going, and we'll cover some topics. And
Okay.
hopefully in the very near future, I can get you some solid answers on what we're going to do with property taxes.
Okay.
I have no plan to convey to you because we can't seem to agree on a plan. But as soon as we have that,
We'll get
I will
worked
have
out.
I'll have all my ducks in a row, and I will be glad to explain that in my best of my ability so that everyone can understand
Okay.
what we've got and what we're going to do going forward.
Sounds good. Well, once again, I appreciate you coming out, and we'll see you soon then. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. Ernest Bailes is our state rep. If you haven't met this guy yet, you need to get out, and he's at a lot of public functions. I know he goes to the Montgomery County Tea Party events and some other events like that. You can hear him speak. You can always check his website or get with me, and we can find out when he's going to be available. But, yeah, get involved. There's a little bit more to it besides just voting. You need to be educated, involved, and at least try to understand the basics of all these things, because it's us as a community. On the Constitution, it starts with we the people. So it's not just our representatives that bear that responsibility. It's us as well. Until the next one, I'm Hank Vatt. This is Hank's Think Tank, and we'll be out.